gosh.
Did you see how precise he was with that click?
Yeah. But you
right
said,
when I hit
you
it.
said you was waiting on me, but
We
you
are.
wasn't waiting on me. The
Yeah,
whole
we
time
was.
we was actually waiting on you and Hunter.
Waiting on
Yeah.
Hunter is a part of the team now. He's responsible for himself. Quit putting all that on me.
Have you ever had a fish tank?
We inherited a bowl.
We're not talking about a bowl.
Well, it was a tank. It wasn't
Okay.
a bowl. It's a tank.
Like-
And we moved, and I think I gave the fish to Brooke, and she killed it.
Was it saltwater?
No, it was a regular like goldfish.
What
Kinda
about
thing.
you, Paul?
Oh yeah, I had freshwater and saltwater.
Did you?
55-gallon. That was.
Did you have anything spectacular in there?
It looked like Nemo.
Deadly.
You know, I had nothing deadly. Just
Chili,
Finding Nemo.
Chili allowed he had a fish tank.
Yeah.
And he's thinking about getting back in it.
We bought Nanny a fish tank for Christmas. She got 4
Oh.
fish in it.
Freshwater?
Yeah.
What kind of fish is in there?
Tetras,
Well, my fish tank
standard Tetras.
opal hit. So I had all these. I had about $500 worth of fish in this 55-gallon tank.
Whoa.
Really?
That's a serious
And
tank.
opal hit, and the power was out for, I don't know, 5-7 days. And all the fish died except for the cheap little damsels. There's these little cheap, they were pretty. They were blue and yellow, little bitty fish. They lived. So then I changed the water back to freshwater, and there was so much salt residue and everything in there that those damsels lived for a long time. When I put
Dang.
like African cichlids in there, freshwater African
Yeah.
cichlids, and we kept that thing for a long time.
What'd you have, Chili?
I had a variety of freshwater fish. I had mainly tropical tetras, but then I like getting little guppies.
Yeah.
Variety of.
Well, I showed Chili.
I also had black warrior cleaners.
What did they do? Just clean?
They would jump out of the back.
Was they called warriors because of their jumping prowess?
That's what I called them.
Oh, that's what you call them. I showed Chili there's this mantis shrimp, a peacock mantis shrimp, and he's about yay long.
No,
By golly, he is too. The big ones.
the big and beautiful ones are, but not the standard.
Yeah, that's what I want, the large and beautiful one. But anyhow, he's got 2 clubs up and under him. And when something walks in front of him,
up and under.
he'll come out and he'll flop. They're like reversed. Instead of like this, he does like this and busts them up with that club and kills them and then eats them.
Once again, them.
Have you seen a pistol shrimp?
No.
They got they snap real hard, sound like a gun going off. Snap that thing down.
Really?
Yeah.
Once again, who's them?
Whatever walks in front of this
Well.
mantis shrimp.
Mm.
And but anyhow, I got a call into a guy. I might be getting me a mantis shrimp.
Is that like black market stuff?
No, this is legit. This is
That it's
legit.
legal.
That's
to-
Dallas Land and Water.
Dallas Land and Water. He's checking around, gonna see
Easy,
About
bud.
a
We're
hun-
not giving out free ads for fish companies.
about $150, $200.
Dallas Land and Water, no free shout outs.
The mantis shrimp, he does that club so fast. So what did it say? Solar heat?
Yeah, but
So fast that it boils the water up in front of his club. And so if he misses with the club, it still throws that hot water
Well,
upon him.
I
do you feed
have.
it?
The other fish and crabs and
that can't be
I-
true, by
Look,
the way. That
I
it's,
have heard of that shrimp. Under the Biden administration, they were talking about trying to exterminate those shrimp because of the heat they were producing,
yeah,
climate
that-
change.
brutal blow that they do.
yeah.
And
That brutal blow.
and it was producing so much heat that it was actually affecting the ozone layer.
Dang.
So I do remember hearing that,
Yeah.
but they called them something else. You probably called them a nickname. They called the official name of them.
Well, the mantis shrimp is the official name of this shrimp.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
peacock managed shrimp.
Peacock, large and beautiful.
Well.
Well, welcome back to the 3 of 7 podcast. We ain't gonna do no spectacular introductions here. Chad's not here. Where is Chad? Texas.
He's down in Florida.
He's down in Florida toting his company on his back right now.
He's the workhorse.
He is the workhorse. So I'm going to host today Cornelius Esquire the Third, Pope Chili,
Thank you.
Blake Hunter's behind the keyboard again, and we got a special guest, Mr. Paul Wilder, with us. How'd you shoot this morning, Paul?
I don't know. That was all right for first time.
I thought you
second
shot
time
good. Yeah,
with
I
that
thought you shot
pistol.
really good. Yeah.
How'd you shoot this morning, Corn?
I shot okay. I shot okay. Hunter shot good for his. Hunter shot a gun for the first time.
Yeah, he
Now,
just
that's-
stepped right up, didn't he?
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah.
That's big to be a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, he did good.
Yeah, he did real good for us first. And Chili daunted his new gear this morning.
It was better, wasn't it?
He's joined an elite club.
K Factor.
Yeah, K Factor. The Red Dot Society.
Uh-huh.
You know, he's above me and Paul out there. You didn't have a red dot, did
No,
you?
sir.
We are us pores out there was just clinking around every once in a
I had
while.
3
Shooting a
white
ROM.
dots.
Yeah,
Oh, I thought Paul and Hunter both shot well.
yeah.
I had
Yeah,
to
they
correct a few things with Paul's grip, bad
Yeah.
habits he's built that you ain't willing to fix. You just keep shooting.
Well, it's
that
not
way.
that I'm not willing not to fix them, but it's when we're out there shooting and we're shooting for score and time and
Mm.
everything else. I ain't got time to fix it.
Well, you're supposed to put the effort in
Yeah, you
outside
fix
of the
it now.
range. You don't fix it when you show up to compete.
Now, listen, bub. If I got time to fix it, I'll fix it. Right now, the main thing is if I got to shoot somebody, I can. So I'm good. Okay. If
Wow.
the range instructor would give me time to fix it, I would fix it.
You had a whole morning
So-
this morning,
so-
and you and Chili
so
chose to
the
do some
lesson-
silly games over there.
The lesson that was good, was it not?
I think that was a good drill, a productive drill.
Yeah.
We did about 5 of them.
Chili beat me in each one of them, by the way.
Yeah, that's sad.
He
All
beat
right. That's pitiful.
It's the red dot.
You have reclaimed your position as worst shooter. At,
well,
Yeah, dude. Come
Well-
on. You are
well-
head of security.
exactly. And you want
And
me
you're
to,
about to have to get
want
some
me to-
remedial training.
You want me to back completely up and start over day one over just 2 little thumbs.
I'll say Corn he's really safe though. He
oh
is
yeah,
really-
he's safer than I am.
Yeah. He is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's real safe. And
Have-
that's what you got to have on the range.
What's
first.
most
Well,
important?
that's what I was explaining to Hunter this morning. He was nervous. I was like, well, don't be nervous about the gun hurting you like your hands or
Yeah.
whatever. If you're going to think about anything that could happen, is amongst us. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing with the actual gun? That's the main thing. So watch yourself, help watch each other, and everything else.
Yeah.
But
That's the first team PT range day we've done in a long time. You know, Chad, he won't do that stuff. He wants to do whatever he's into.
yeah, I agree.
The last one was when he was trying to train for the tactical games. That was
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a real
good to get out and shoot some, you know.
Chili did like really good with that red dot.
He just needed something for his eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he
I
did.
mean,
He's got astigmatism.
that is my worst attribute for shooting. It's like, it's well known. My eyesight's not the best. But that really helped today. So
Yeah,
cleaned up a few things.
you did real good, man.
I appreciate that.
You did real. What about that fire I had going?
Oh, that's not even worth talking about.
That kept Hunter. Did you not stay warm? See, he stayed warm.
Dude, you seen him holding the camera. He was shaking like
That's because he weighs 86 pounds and he was away from the
And a
fire.
half.
Yeah, and a half, and he was away from the fire.
he was shaking like a daggone leaf on a tree in dead of winter.
Yeah. Speaking of fires, so we was at the house the other day, and I'm moving, so I got a bunch of tax papers and whatnot like that I was burning in a burn barrel, and everything was wet and whatnot, and the fire wouldn't get going good. I put some paper in there, I lighted a fire, and by the time I'd come back out with some more, it would be out. Well, Buck got home, my oldest son. He got home, and I said, hand me that gas over there. So I light the fire in there, and there was a bunch of wet wood and stuff in there. So I take that gas jug, and I say, gloosh, and it just comes up a little bit. And I was like, well, that ain't enough. So I take it, and I go, gloosh. And that fire shot up and got on the nozzle of that gas can.
Yeah, that's bad.
And I said, whoa. So and Buck's like, it's going to blow up. So I chunked it like that before I thought,
No, it wouldn't have blown up.
well, It hit the leaves right yonder in the woods, and I'm talking caught them leaves immediately. So here is the gas can with the end of the dang thing to far, the end of the nozzle on far. All the gas what sloshed out when I threw it had done caught the leaves afar.
That is reckless.
Yeah, I mean, this is.
That's how fires of Los Angeles get started. Like, you're
So-
lucky you didn't burn Dallas.
So I
down.
allowed the buck. I said, we need some water. So I go over there and start stomping on the leaves, and the wind's blowing. So it's not like detrimental, like, oh, we're about to burn Dallas down. But it's like, hey, we got to get this put out because this is about to be bad.
Well, the ground's wet.
So I'm stomping and stomping and stomping, and Buck goes in the house. He walks in the house.
No big hurry.
No big hurry. And he comes out.
You need to be relaxed.
I agree. He
It
comes
sounds
out.
like you were panicking. You're panicking now.
I'm trying to keep the world from burning to the ground.
Ground's wet.
That-
It won't spread fast.
By golly, it was spreading fast, I'm telling you, on them leaves. So Buck goes in there and comes out, like a bowl that you would put your popcorn from the microwave in.
No.
Like a small mixing bowl.
Yeah. He come out with a bowl of water.
He said, I got it, Daddy.
So I kicked that gas can over, just waiting on a freaking explosion.
Yeah.
Right. I kick it back out into the middle of the yard to get it away from the leaves. And Buck's going over and just shh.
Well, he's a lineman, not a fireman.
Shh. Just barely pouring water. I'm like, it's not going to put that gas can out, bub. You got to come over here. He used every bit of it up. I'm hollering, go get the water hose while I'm still stomping it out. I had these britches on, by the way. Still stomping it out. And he goes back in the house to get another one. When he comes
Bowl of
back,
water.
finally, I've got it all put out.
Yeah.
I felt like I had failed.
You see, it ain't spreading
As a-
fast.
Do what?
It ain't spreading fast if you
It-
can put it out with your feet.
I can stomp some stuff pretty
Well,
fast.
what you've just told us is
Have you ever seen me
you
clog?
you can't start a fire where it should be, but you can start a great fire where it shouldn't be.
Hold
Yeah.
on. Did you say you failed as a father?
That's what I felt like.
Why?
Because Buck didn't have sense enough to go hook up the dad blasted water hose in the backyard, which was only like 50 yards, and then turn us an endless supply of water on. And I said, Buck, what was going through your head when I asked you? He said, well, you said we needed water.
That's
and,
something G would do.
and all I could think about was the kitchen sink.
Oh.
And brought out 2 bowls of a mixing bowl water. Oh, I was so ticked, big time ticked. But which leads me to why I'm glad Paul's here, because I know Paul has worked with kids. How many years, Paul?
29 professionally.
29 years. So Paul has got a plethora of experience of seeing children being raised the correct way. I'm sure you've seen a lot of parents making mistakes. You've got 4 children of your own.
Yes, sir.
4 children of your own. And me and Blake's been wanting to have a conversation on parenting too. All in all, me and you had a conversation the other day, Chili, about a child that come out of an orphanage and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Yeah.
pretty enlightening. And also, I think as the conversation goes on, Chili, don't think that you can't add anything to it, because there's a lot of misrepresentation from other people about only children. And definitely was an only child. So you're going to have some input on this. So don't just sit over there and not
What
say
on what?
nothing.
Parenting?
We'll just see
How
where
do
the
you know?
conversation
How do you know?
goes. Because you was parented.
How do you know?
That's why.
How do you know I didn't have a sibling?
Because you told us you didn't.
Yeah.
That's one indicator.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So what do you think about Buck going in there to get
Hold
the
on.
water?
Hey.
Oh,
You didn't fail as a dad. I just want to get that out.
Okay. All right. What do you think about that, Paul? What would you have done had Caleb, you hollering for water, went out there, went in the house and got you a
Well,
thimble
that
of
wouldn't have
water?
been Caleb that did that, probably, if it was your kids, would it?
probably not. Yeah, I might want to call any of them out on it.
Right.
But yeah, I think sometimes you do that. You see a kid do something different than you would and go, oh wow. But at my house, it would be because the hose isn't near enough to
Wouldn't reach.
Wouldn't reach enough.
yeah, or it's the one that I turned off because I hadn't used it. And
Yeah.
in the winter, I'm afraid to freeze, so I turn off one in the bottom. That'd be my luck. He'd put the hose on the one that I'd turned off, and then I have to tell him where he could go inside to turn it on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, you know, you look at those little things and you say, well, that's a manifestation of what I did or didn't do, and those kinds of things. But sometimes it's just a manifestation of panic. You know,
Yeah.
he's just trying to hurry up and do the quickest thing. He probably thought it'd take too long to hook the hose up,
And that's what he said. Yeah.
yeah, he was trying to get you water as fast as possible. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Or
I
he was
don't think
walking.
that's a failure in any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. He was indeed walking.
Well, that kind of puts a wrench in what his explanation was.
Exactly. Thank you. 100%. So I think most of your children are close to the same age as mine. Buck just turned 24. Cooney turned 21 today.
Oh, happy birthday, Cooney.
Yeah. He turned 20. Is it that the age range?
So I've got a 25-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 19-year-old, and I guess he's 20, and then a 18-year-old
Yeah.
just turned 18.
That looking at making this move, me and my wife's planning on moving. Yeah, and this is a selfish thought, but I'm definitely having the thought, looking at moving 3 counties away from them. You know, I'm like, this morning Buck calls me at 7:00 and his truck broke down in Marietta, which is, 40 minutes from Dallas roughly. And I was like, oh man, all right, let me go help him. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I'm about to be 3 counties away. There's not going to be an option. And he's 24 years old, and he wasn't asking for help. Like, these are things I'm relaying that I've had an issue with in parenting them myself, is like letting them do the stuff they need to do. But that was my thought this morning. I was like, dang, man, I really wish I could go help Buck, but I just feel like I shouldn't be helping him. I can say, hey, get your wrecker, haul it here, but everything else should be on him. But that's one thing. I'm like, dang, I'm moving 3 counties away, and I'm about to leave these jokers by themselves. How I feel, which we all know that's not reality, but I'm having some trouble dealing with that. When your oldest went to Alabama.
Yes. Well, no, my oldest is an electrician. He stayed close by. My Natalie went to Berry.
Mm-hmm.
That's my second one. And she's teaching now.
Yeah.
And then Joshua is in Alabama, and we've missed him. He worked with the football team, traveled with them. So, even Christmas, he came home for 3 days and then went back to work, So we've really missed him, missed having him around. But it's fun to watch them spread their wings. And I think, Tim Elmore talks about that a lot on one of his podcasts. He's got a podcast called Growing Leaders. It's got a lot of great input for any age and for parenting, but also for like college age kids who are thinking about careers and thinking about leadership development. But he talks about how we don't really give kids space to fail a lot of times, and I think I heard a really good explanation. Brandon Lake's dad. Brandon Lake does praise and worship, on a pretty big scale. And his dad's a leadership coach. And he said they were having a podcast and we're talking about, Mac said it was almost like watching him go into ministry and watching him go into his career. He felt like he was letting go of the bicycle, you know? And I think that's a good image of what it feels like being a parent at the beginning. They're on a tricycle. And you put training wheels on a bicycle. Then you take the training wheels off and you kind of help them get started so that they can stay upright for a minute. And then once they get going, you run with them a little bit, and then you have to let go. And I think Tim Elmore mentions how much we don't let go. Yeah. When we're still there to pick them up. We're still there to help teach and train and tell them, hey, you should have gotten a hose, but we give them some space to make those mistakes, because that's how you learn. You learn through failure. You learn through, and a lot of times, I find in my job, parents oftentimes, if I call about a mistake a kid made or what have you, there's so much defensiveness and ownership we take in failure and success of kids. And sometimes we don't realize that a lot of that's just life and them growing, and we have to let them experience those things.
Yeah.
And I think that's those hovering, we call them a helicopter parent or a hovering parent. That's every little thing's got to be perfect. And we do so much for them. And I think some of the things you got to let kids make decisions for themselves. And, you start out early, a kid can't do anything on their own. You're feeding them, you're changing their diapers,
Yeah.
and they're crying. And usually when they're crying as a little baby, they're either hungry or they're dirty.
Right.
And then you try to teach them to be able to communicate as they're able to communicate, because all they want to do is cry and tell you stuff. Eventually you teach them language and you help them understand how you want them to communicate. But eventually it gets to a place, I think, as adults, because it happens so fast, but so slow at the same time. So you get tricked and lulled into this controlling and manipulating instead of, just parenting and guiding. And I think that's hard for everybody.
Yeah. That's been the hardest thing that I had to learn, was just not being scared to let them fail and
Yep.
let them learn stuff on their own. And a lot of it was, like you said, I was vested in their success. Like, it made me feel good when they were successful, and that then become about me. Like when they was young and wrestling, and when they was out there, if they did good at a wrestling workout, then, I felt really good about it. But really, had they been failing more, they would have been becoming better wrestlers. You know what I mean? So walking out of every tournament and out of every practice there at the beginning was really important for me, and relaying to them like, hey, you could have done better. This wasn't really successful, and blah, blah, so on and so forth. But had they really been failing more, their progression and their level that they would have been growing immensely like that. Did you, how old is Blakely and Joe?
They're 8 and 5.
That have you experienced any of that yourself? Like saying, hey, they need to fail. I need to let them mess this
Yeah,
up.
I mean, that's the temptation, is just to do everything for them. One, out of impatience, I think. Like, I can remember Blakely trying to climb up on the bed, and I was just sitting there watching her, and I almost went and just put her up there, and I was like, well, no, I mean, she's got to learn how to get around and get on things, and she would fall off, but like eventually, I think I would do it out of impatience, because I'm just like, well, let's just get it, like, let's move on with things. Come on, you got to get in the bed. I don't have 5 minutes to let you flounder around trying to get up there. And so, yeah, I mean, a lot of that's probably done out of our own selfishness because of what we want.
Yeah.
Maybe impatience, or for the purpose of, like, well, I know how to do it, and it'll be better for you if I just do it. And I think probably we confuse parenting a lot too, because it's the same thing with adults. Like, Paul out on the range today has this grip with his pistol that he's developed, and I show him how to do it right, and he does it right until he layers on something new. Then you revert back to it, and just like Buck, if he was sitting there, he'd probably thought, well, I'd get the water hose if that would have happened. But then when he was pressed in this situation, he just went to, like, whatever his mind went to. And it's the same thing with teaching adults things. You can't just do everything for everybody.
Yeah.
And we've seen that with Chili, trying to raise him up and teach him things. And, he just, the temptation is just to want to do everything for him. And
Oh my God.
but he's gotten pretty good. Chad's done a good job raising him.
He has done pretty good. Yeah. Hey, do you remember anything from your childhood, like where you felt like, okay, I can tell mom and daddy's going to let me do this on my own, and if it don't work out, I still got them for guidance or even backup. You know what I mean?
I mean, as much as my mom is the type that, would never want to see me fail, and is kind of like, she has tendency to if I just sucked at something, the first thing I would hear from her is, you did great, and all that, which in a way that's a good thing. Like, she was always my biggest fan and supporter. And I mean, I think that's a good thing. Like, the alternative is to just always be down in your children, but she, even being that way, I mean, she would definitely let me do things, and try things. And obviously dad too. But the thing with me is I grew up running a lot, and
Right.
being terrible as a, when I started cross country in 3rd grade, like I wasn't talented at all. I mean, I remember getting about last in cross country meets in 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, like never any good. But the thing with running is they couldn't have done that for me if they wanted to. Like
Right.
that was the main thing that I gravitated to and liked. And of course, there's all kinds of other examples of trying things and whatever, but like they couldn't have stepped in and done that even if they wanted to, because it's such a individual sport,
Right.
and an individual effort. Like there's no opportunity for that. So, I mean, that, I wanted to be better. And I think when I was young, I wanted that to be easy and quick. And probably even looked for someone to do it for me or help, but you quickly realize you can't. And then, I think that taught me a lot about just doing everything, like figuring out anything on your own.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
trying to get better at that.
Yeah.
I think it's good for young people to aim to get better at something. Like I think you should always be doing that as you get older and never stop as an adult. But I think it's just critical for young kids to do that too, just to learn all kinds of things. I mean, Chad always craps on sports, so we've made that kind of a joke, but I think organized sports as a child teaches you so many things that's like the perfect avenue to learn how to operate in a team.
Yep.
I mean, like I'm playing basketball, like as silly as it sounds, but playing as a young, tiny kid, like you learn how to operate as a team. You learn, okay, well, this person's good at this, so this is going to be their role, and I'm good at this, so this is my role. And like that just teaches you all kinds of things about operating in a business and as an employee, and respect, for your coaches and respect for your I mean, it just teaches you all kinds of things that I don't know that when you're really young, there's a much better way to learn those things. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
And that was my world growing up, playing soccer, basketball, cross country.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you was talking to the parents or whatever, if there was an issue going on or whatever. I was talking to a buddy the other day. I had a nephew that went to the school you was a principal at, and I know how much he respected and thought of you there. But I was talking to a buddy and told him that Paul was coming on, and he said, "Man, those kids at that school like him." And I remember when I was in elementary school and middle school, the principal was sort of thought of holy smokes, I don't want nothing to do with that joker. Like, what do you attest that? Do you feel that from the students? And you said, talking sometimes to parents, you get some defense and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
what's that feedback from the parents too?
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, it's like anything else. You have folks that are vested and invested, and if they kind of get a feel and flow for the culture and environment you have. So those folks probably like us. And then, some folks are not necessarily connected. So they're only looking at one incident. And we're
Right.
human too. So we can
Yeah,
make mistakes.
absolutely.
Kids aren't the only ones that make mistakes in a school. I think one of the major things about, leadership, that's what parenting is. The
Yeah.
first person you lead yourself. So in parenting, the first thing you have to do is you have to have integrity in yourself, and you have to be able to decide who you want to be. And integrity means that it doesn't matter what happens, it doesn't change. Like who you are doesn't change. And you have instances like Blake mentioned with the gun, you're practicing a new skill and that kind of thing. But with principles in your life, the more you anchor those principles, and that's how you make decisions. And so I think kids know I'm hard sometimes. I'm blunt. Like kids want to come hug me in the hall. I'm like, I'm not huggy and touchy feely, but I love them and they know that. I think some of the major things I think with parenting that works for me at the school as well is just good communication. Like I don't tell them what not to do all the time. I tell them what to do. And we have standards and a set of standards that we say, hey, this is this, and this is what it means. What are some examples? And engage them in those. And I have kids, we do discipline talks twice a year where all the whole grade levels in there and I'm talking to them. And you can see their eyes shift. They expect me to just tell them, hey, don't run in the hallways and don't do, but we talk about, safety first, think before you speak or act, always be ready to learn. And that's a growth mindset. Always be ready. Because if they're reading it and it's not hard for them, then we're not challenging them. You should always be able to teach somebody to push themselves to the point that it's hard. And so I think that's the kind of culture, even in your home with your children, you have to, first of all, that was when we had Caleb. I remember pulling over on the side of the road. Amy got sick in the car. And that's kind of how we knew. I thought she was sick because we just bought a new car. And then we had to stop right before the subdivision. And we're going down the road. And Amy, we're like, she must be ready. She took the test. And I remember when we were like, we're about to bring a kid into this world. And I just had this heaviness and weight for about 5 seconds. It wasn't long. Because the next thing I did was I thought, man, there's a bunch of other idiots out there in the world doing this. I got to be able to figure it out somehow. And what I've kind of landed on is if you're growing and developing as a human, all you're trying to help them to do is be a good human. So the first way you do that is you model that. You do that in front of them and have integrity. So like the question about kids in school, they have to know that I love them and care about them. Don't care what the background is. I don't care if they're in trouble. I may be fussing 1 second, but I don't have a kid leave my office without them knowing that, hey, everything I've had to do in terms of consequences or anything else, because I care about you and I want you to make a better choice the next time. And I think that's, I've had to be hard on some kids.
Yeah.
And, but the key, like when you're disciplining your children or anything else, is make sure that the last thing they hear from you, the first thing may be that correction and maybe that, but the last thing they hear from you is love. Right. And that's true with everybody. We act like love is somewhere, love's not an emotional feeling. It's a choice that we make to serve and sacrifice because we value somebody else. And there's nobody I value more. Number one, and this is something I think is important, is priorities. I think, Amy and I having a healthy relationship is probably the most important thing I do as a father for my children. Because, well, first of all, it's my relationship with God, and then my relationship with Amy, and then my relationship with my children. And when children come onto the scene, it's real easy for that relationship with the husband and wife to kind of take a back seat.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful with that. I think it's fine. There are times there's no choice.
Yeah.
And there's times, even on a job, like there's times when you're more busy. I was coaching and teaching early in my career, and I was coaching and I was gone on the weekends, gone late every day, those kinds of things. And Amy was pretty much doing everything. And, I think you got to work through those things though, and make sure that my kids need to see and hear, and you can't fake it. They need to hear and see good relationships between people. And the one they see every day is the one with your wife. And I remember thinking when we were bringing kids in the world going, man, I can't fake it now. You go stand on a stage at a church or sit on a podcast and talk, and your kids are going to hear it. It's a whole nother world.
Right. Yeah.
It's a great responsibility because that love it seems like it's almost, because that's your seed, that's your child. It's almost more of an automatic than, the love for somebody else's kid that you're entrusted with.
Yeah. That took me a long time to learn too, is my boys, like they still are my best friends, but I definitely throughout my marriage put them constantly in front of my wife, and what I did with them for a long, long time. That was another hard lesson for me to learn. So letting the kids know that you love them and care. So I guess what I was trying to explain beforehand, like, and y'all two give me y'all's opinion on how when y'all went to school, like you just didn't see the administrators that much, or it didn't feel like it. Not that they were doing a bad job. So I would assume, unless you did something bad. So I would assume you're having to be intentional with that. Like, I mean, what are you out there walking in the halls every morning, I've
I
heard
walk.
2 or 3 people saying you're parking cars in the morning with the teachers and everything else.
Yeah, I probably walk. We had a party day right before breaks. We usually have like right before Christmas break, we have these holiday parties, and I'm walking around helping make sure we got everybody safe. And then I'm walking in the building to make sure,
Yeah.
nothing weird's going on, checking on classrooms, going back out to the parking. I walked 9. I had on my phone. I was like, I walked over 9 miles on that day. And a typical average day, I walk about 4 or 5 miles.
Yeah.
And because I'm walking, a lot of times when we can call an intercom down to the classroom for me to get a kid to talk to, I'll walk down there and I'll either talk to them outside the classroom so I'm not disrupting their time, or if I am going to have a private conversation, uh, if I have to, I call them up. But a lot of times I'll go down to the classroom and get them. And so that's the presence, people knowing you're there. And if something goes wrong, you're probably in baseball, you always tell kids before the pitch to be moving. Even if they're moving in the wrong direction, the fact that they're moving causes them to be able to react quicker than just sitting still. And that's the same thing with, being a principal, being moving and not just being at your desk. I sit at my desk when we have breaks and teachers and students are at home. And then I clean off my desk. My desk looks like a disaster most of the time because until one of those breaks happens, because I'm not doing stuff at my desk when kids are there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be out there, see what's going on, and get into classrooms, see what's going on, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Like you go to the principal when you was little.
Man, I didn't get in I don't know if I've ever been to the principal's office. I'm a rule follower.
Are you?
That's
That's a good way to be.
Our kids are total opposite. Our oldest is not she has her ways that she wants to do things, and she don't want to adhere to anybody. Now, she's coming around a little bit, but Joe, she wants to tell you how she is following all the rules when the other one's breaking them. And so all kids are different, they're totally different. And, that here they are only 2.5 years apart. They're both girls raised in the same household and, basically the same generation. And it's wild how different they are. And, Blakely, the oldest, she like I say, she'll try to buck you on a lot of things, but I think at least I've learned, like, for a while we would tell her, hey, don't do, and obviously we're raising them in a Christian household, we're telling them don't do this and here's why. But then they question that a lot, and they should. But that, people would ask how to be a better parent or husband or whatever, but it's really like Paul said, just having, being a better person, basically having that integrity so they know what to expect. But Blakely is like, I'll tell her she likes to wear like these just holes in her jeans and things, and I'm like, hey, look, we're not wearing that. She wants to wear makeup. Joe doesn't really care about makeup, and so one of them we're have to kind of rein in a little bit. The other one we're having to kind of spur along. But it's much easier. It's easier to neglect the one you have to spur along and pay a lot of attention to the one you have to rein in because just of the character traits they have. But I was talking with Blakely the other day, and I was like, man, I feel like I'm just telling her all the time, do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. And so I asked her, she had on this thing or whatever, and I said, Blakely, do you think that you can honor God with that outfit? And that finally got through to her, and she said, no, I don't think so. And I was like, if Jesus came to earth today and say you was going to go eat some lunch with him or something, is that the outfit you'd wear to go meet him? And she was like, uh-uh. I was like, of what you know about God in the Bible, is that what you would choose? And she was like, no. And then, and this has been a few weeks ago, but in the days since, she'll still, try to, and she's not trying to wear like this crazy stuff, but she'll want to wear like a belly shirt or something. It's like, around the house, whatever, sometimes, but when we're out, no, like it's not acceptable because it doesn't honor God. Right. And so, and I say, hey, you shouldn't have that. And she'll say, yeah, I was thinking about, I know that this doesn't honor God, and she'll go change rather than try to fight with you about it. And so to the point you said, I'm not trying to always tell them what not to do, but maybe what to do. And really, more not guiding, you are guiding their behaviors and actions to an extent, but it's more about like really challenging their thought process on the things. And, I was running with Bob the other day, and we were talking about that. And I said, sometimes I feel like she'll do those things just to please me. Like she wants to make me happy. So she'll maybe ma- do this thing that I'm asking because not because it's right, but because she wants to please me. But I also understand children obeying their parent is pleasing to God. And so that is a way. But he said something I'd never thought about. He said, well, really, that's what one of the reasons that the law is in place in the Bible is to protect us until our heart catches up to understand the real meaning behind it. He's like, these laws
Right.
and rules are in place. So even if she is doing it to please you, that's okay. If she doesn't understand why, it's okay that she's doing it just to please you, because her heart will catch up and she'll understand the reason behind it. And I never thought of it that way, because I've always thought you should do right because it's right, not because I say to do it, not because you want to please me. But by him saying that really made me think and kind of view it in a little bit different light. So
I think shepherding a kid's heart is the hard part. And so I think you really have to be intentional, because what happens is we try to color the fruit. Like you got an apple tree and we try to spray paint the fruit. We want the fruit to look good. But what produces good fruit is the heart, the nourishing of the heart. So the roots produce the good fruit from the tree. So fertilizer and water, making sure it's getting what it needs that way. And so I think uh, Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People talks about the character ethic versus the behavioral ethic. And a lot of literature over the last 15, 20 years has been about external things that we can see rather than character, rather than things that are, internal from the heart. And, I truly believe, especially at a young age, I think a parent's number one job is, like I said, first honor God themselves. But the second thing is to teach their kids to hear their voice and obey. Because the Bible says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. But the way we love God, the way we demonstrate we love God is we obey. His voice has to matter to us. And so we have to teach our kids that our voice should matter to you. I'll never forget, Caleb was at we were getting ready for a big 4th of July shindig or something. And there was a kid in our youth group that was in the yard, and he was walking down with Caleb, talking to him about something while they were doing some work. And I called Caleb's name, and he wasn't that far away from me, and Caleb didn't hear me. And I called it again, and he stopped. And you could tell the guy that was with him, John, could tell he was nervous. And John said, "Oh," John was trying to apologize for him not hearing, he didn't hear me because John was talking to him. "Oh, I was talking to him." And I remember telling John, "Yeah, that's fine. Ain't nothing wrong with you talking to him, but I expect him to hear my voice." And that's extreme. I don't, mean that in an ugly, like, I ain't gonna whoop my kid because they didn't hear my, you know what I'm saying? But that was the expectation. If we're in a crowd of people and I call your name, I expect you to hear my voice. That's how. I'm not saying that's right to the level that I take it to, but I do think the principle of teaching your kids to hear your voice and obey, because you absolutely are the only person on earth they know that loves them unconditionally. And so how are they going to, if they can't hear your voice and obey, how are they going to learn to hear God's voice and obey?
Yeah.
And so that's, to me, one of the foundational principles of being a parent. And I think the balance of, as they grow, you are really kind of keeping the boundaries pretty narrow and really leading, guiding, and directing early on a lot more than you are later on. And there's times when you talk, we talk too much to them and give them too much information.
Yeah.
And then there's times we don't enough, and that keeping that balance is really hard. But I think to your point, when you said that about, we absolutely struggle so much, I think, with trying to find the way to make sure, especially if it's something they do over and over and over again, it's really hard to get to the bottom of it. And I think a lot of problems with parenting today is we're so busy.
Yeah.
Ever go to a restaurant and watch a family eat? What's
Yeah.
everybody doing?
Yeah, on the phones. Yeah.
Including the parents.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And we're so distracted and we have everything. And so I think intentionality and spending time with your children
Well, and
is
you've
such a
said before about something I've always thought about is how you shouldn't parent your kids based off of how other people see them. You know, like you should parent them with basically the same all the time. And you know, the example I would think of in my head is like your kid is acting up in a restaurant and everybody's looking at him, and you're like, I'm about to whoop that joker's tail for acting up in this because he's embarrassing me. But really, it's like, well, I mean, what are they doing? Like if they were doing this at home, and there's certain, you should act certain ways, certain places, right, and manners and things. But sometimes the punishment will be more severe if you are embarrassed by what your kid has done. When that's not okay, right? I mean, because it's
Amy was so
inconsistent.
good at this. We would have situations come up where the kid would not be responding the way we needed them to. And so you say yes to both. Like for instance, in a restaurant, what would I do if I tell one of my kids not to do something and they continue to do it? Spanking, to spank or not to spank. That's a whole nother, but if that kid's being rebellious and not hearing my voice and obeying, I'm going to calmly take them to the bathroom. And the reason is I respect them enough that I want to give them the dignity of being able, I mean, who likes being called out in front of a bunch of people? And then also it protects me from being influenced by either way, like somebody who thinks I'm being ridiculous, I make my kid mind, or somebody the other way, you know. And Amy was so good at, because a lot of times especially if we were around family and I was comfortable, I'd just get on to them, discipline them, whatever it was, right there in front of everybody. And she taught me just by doing it. She taught me if the kid was hitting somebody or doing something, she would go down there, pick them up, take them out and teach them why they shouldn't have been doing what they're doing. If they needed a spanking or they needed something, she would do that. But protecting their dignity and treating people the way you want. So that's principles. I mean, treat people the way you want to be treated. I do the same thing with an adult. I don't sit there and teacher does something wrong, sit there and fuss at them or, you know, in front of everybody. We have a private conversation, you know, those kinds of things. Same thing with kids. But I think a lot of times our motivation in what we're shepherding can be real selfish. It can be, you know, not that, but also, you know, one thing I had to learn is just because I like it or it's what I expect doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way to do it.
Yeah.
But for my kids, it is.
Yeah.
Like I think as a father and a mother, you have to have a set of boundaries and clarity about what's important to you. But you also have to be careful not to try to judge other people on those same standards necessarily.
Yeah.
If it's violating the principle of love, ultimately, yes. But like even in a restaurant, what I might think's okay in a restaurant is very different. And I'm learning, like my son, you know, we have a grandchild now. So little Blair Bear is starting to have to be told no and have to be directed more. And, you know, I've had a conversation with Caleb and Krista even about, hey, if I ever say something or do something in a way that's not okay with you, you're her parent, not me.
Yeah.
And on the same token, I've had conversations with them about how, you know, yeah, I'm a grandfather, but I'm still going to expect them to mind when they're around me, you know, that kind of thing. Because my grandfather and grandmother were not like, my granddaddy whipped me, you know, if he needed to, you know, it was a whole different kind of thing. But it is interesting. I find myself, especially now that I'm older and wiser, I realize how much as a young father I parented based on just my expectations and what I wanted, and in my own embarrassment and those kinds of things like you mentioned. But I think that's better though than total neglect and letting a kid just not have boundaries, because that's going to hurt them everywhere.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Chili, did you ever get a whooping when you was a kid?
I think I think one time.
Chili went to private school. He didn't get whoopings.
I think one time when I was I don't even remember it. I was so young, but I think I was 5 years old, and it was in church.
Who did it?
My dad. And I don't know what I did. I don't really remember anything about it, but I vaguely remember this happening, and they'll even tell the story about the one time I got whooped. And I seriously don't even know what I was doing.
Jeff jerked that tail up, didn't he?
But I remember, and not like
You didn't feed that rabbit, did you?
not like I acted like a perfect angel after this. But yeah, that definitely did all it needed to do for about the rest of my life.
I think the discussion of discipline is important. I mean, it could, like you said, it can go deep, so we ain't got to go there. But I remember the last whooping that I got, because it was a whooping. Me and my cousin was out yonder throwing crab apples at the cars going by. And
I never did nothing like that.
The male figure, the male figure in my household was my grandfather. That up until I was about 12 years old, and he was a mountain of a man. And anyhow, we was out on the side of the hill pegging cars with crab apples, about 8 years old.
You're just a delinquent.
And there was a Cadillac pulled up in the driveway, and we knew that they was going to tell Pawpaw. So me and my cousin took off running and hid under the bed. And he found us and lifted that bed up, and he had a hickory. And that was the last whooping I got. I didn't need no more whoopings at all. But you know, one thing that gets thrown around, and I don't know the context, and I'm not meaning to put you on the spot, but if anybody does, it's probably Paul. When people talk about disciplining their kid, you know, they spare the rod, spare the child. Do you know the context behind?
Yeah, the Bible says that the rod of correction will drive foolishness from a child. So, you know, that's probably where that's right. It's not, the Bible doesn't say it that way, but it says what I just, and I think it's far more abusive to talk a kid to death when they're a little bitty kid. I'm just gonna give my personal opinion.
Yeah,
like I whooped my kids.
Yeah.
We had a wooden spoon everywhere we went when they were real little. And Amy did a lot of it because she stayed home most of the time with the kids. She taught for 8 years, and then we were able to get her home with Natalie and Caleb. And we'd be on the way to church. And I remember one time I told Natalie to put her seatbelt on over and over. Like every time we go to church, she'd not have her. We drove a long way to church at the time. And I remember one time pulling I told her, I said, if you don't put your seatbelt on, I'm going to spank you. Because I told her over and over and over again. And so she heard my voice, she knew, but it wasn't important enough for her to prioritize it. So I tried to make it important enough for her to prioritize it. And I remember pulling over on the side of Yorkville Highway over there with no shoulder. And I didn't want to do it, but I told her that's what was going to happen again. And I whooped her. And, but I think the thing is I feel like when kids are younger, whatever you choose to do, like, I think you'll find, like, when you're parenting, you'll know if whatever consequence you gave, whether it's timeout or spanking or whatever it is, whether it worked.
Yeah.
And I always found that when they were younger like that, we didn't whip them for making mistakes. Mm-hmm. Like, I know one of my kids ran the golf cart into the garage door and they thought they were going to get a whooping. Like, you were releasing the brake. You didn't, that was an accident. You didn't mean to do that.
Right.
But one of them flipped a four-wheeler, and they thought they got a whipping for flipping the four-wheeler, even though I talked to them about why they got a whipping for riding a four-wheeler where they weren't supposed to. They wouldn't have flipped it if they, so those kind of things. So I think the purpose for me, the spanking, when you did it, there was an immediate consequence. We had a conversation about it, and then it was done. Whereas, a lot of times we just talk a kid to death, and that's just as abusive, because there probably never was even a mark, and I don't think any of my kids got spankings past probably 4 or 5, maybe. Maybe like one, like Timothy's may have been a little bit later on the four-wheeler thing. I mean, I just don't remember having to after the young age of discipline them when they're 2, 3, 4. After that, I don't remember us having to do a whole lot of that. And of course, there were things of taking a phone away or doing those kinds of things based on certain. And usually I tried to make sure the discipline was applied kind of in the area that the disobedience occurred. Right. And it was always, any of the like spankings were like blatant rebellion. It wasn't, I'm spanking you because you messed up,
Yeah.
I've got a question.
Come on with it.
What do y'all think about arguing, mom and dad arguing in front of the kids?
Well, that's counterintuitive to what Paul was explaining, being with your wife. I have done it when we were, the children were younger, and not like knock down, drag out, but probably conversations that didn't need to be. And you would notice afterwards, like them little jokers would be looking at you like, what in the world? Like, and so we learned really quick that, hey, if there was something that, even if your voice was going to be stern, or there was a possibility for that needed to be in private. Because if you are, air quotes, arguing, you are more liable to say something you don't mean, or raise your voice when you shouldn't even be raising your voice at all, in my personal opinion. So it shouldn't be done in front of them at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's kind of more of a general thing with anybody. I think when you're having a conversation with their mom, is that conversation productive and healthy? Is there mutual respect?
Yeah.
We always were intentional about, like, Amy did so good about, like, I would say something in the kitchen that got under her skin. And she would be like, okay, I can't fight this battle right now. And sometimes she'd signal me some way, or I'd know, well, yeah, we got to go to the bedroom, or go to the bathroom so they can't hear us, And so most of the time we've tried to do that.
Yeah.
Unless the conversation was about something we felt like was beneficial for them to see, that it's okay for mom and dad to see something differently. And even when we disagree, we were both very intentional about being unified for our kids. So there were times Amy didn't agree with the way I was doing something or saying something, and she always addressed that with me by myself sometime later. Because none of it was ever abusive. I think if it had been abusive or something, if I'd have been, obviously, she would have come in. But I think it's, you want to model that. But I honestly, when you go to the bedroom and have that private conversation, you better check how you're doing then too.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's hard. Like, the actual truth about that answer is, should you even be having a conversation?
Yeah.
That,
Yep.
And,
you're right.
And Lord knows I've had plenty of them, and probably in front of and then I have a tendency to, I'm opinionated. I have a strong stance on a lot of things, and it's my house, so I carry the rule. And sometimes I'll say something in a way that, like, Amy's talking about something, and I think it's, whatever, I've got a judgmental comment about it, and I say it, even if I don't really mean it as judgmental as it comes off, and I watch Amy cower, or watch her body language showing that, okay, you just shot that down. That was supposed to just be a fun conversation, and you got too serious about it. And then the kids are impacted by that. And that's a bad weakness of mine. I'm confessing. That's something I really do. So, like, maybe they're talking about something that's just on YouTube, or a short they just saw, and I'm bringing out the principle of why it's wrong, when they're just trying to laugh and have fun. And there's no and I can so I think that speaks to the same issue of, you got to check yourself and all of those things. And I think the biggest thing is, if they ever see that, like, if I ever say something to Amy that's hurtful in front of the kids, I apologize to her, but I find a time to talk to the kids about it too.
Yeah.
And that brings up another point. I think something that we did for a long time later in life, when the kids were a little bit older, probably Timothy was probably 8. We started having family meetings on Sunday afternoon so late in the afternoon, and every kid shared something, usually something they felt like they'd gotten out of the Bible or something that God was showing them. They'd share something that's, stressful and something that's going well. Everybody shared that. And then I'd usually close it out with the same kind of thing. And I would openly share, y'all remember the other night when we were talking in the kitchen with Mom, that was wrong. I'm working on that, but I used to make mountains out of molehills and just get, all angry.
Yeah.
And that Sunday was a great opportunity. I might have already apologized for it or corrected it, and I would try to direct that with scripture. This is why Dad was wrong. And I'm going to try to work on that, and our words and those kind of things.
How early did you start that with directing everything with scripture?
For kids,
Yeah.
Kids would come into the bedroom scared, to sleep in their bed, whatever's going on, there's a boogeyman, whatever. And we immediately were, that God has not given me a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. Be anxious for nothing, but by prayer and supplication, make your request known unto God. There's nothing. And we would take them back to the bedroom, turn the light on, and say, this is what's going on here.
Yeah.
You're fine. You're safe. And do the natural things too. But we always, most of the time, we tried to connect most things that were, anytime. That's why I think it's so important that you renew your mind by the word day by day. The Bible says in First John and in Joshua 1:8, this book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that's written there. And like when I'm changing habits on gun, Blake comes and reminds me, he's renewing my mind to what I was trained in before.
Right.
And I was doing it right before, but now we do that in our lives all the time. We get out of a habit, out of sync with the spirit, and walking in the flesh. And so teaching kids that at a young age, they might, even before they can comprehend it, because the word of God is alive and powerful, quicker than any sharper than any two-edged sword, and Proverbs says, my son, attend to my word, incline thine ear to my sayings, let it not depart from thine eyes, keep it in the midst of thine heart, for they are life to those that find them, and health to all their flesh. So I think teaching your kids the word of God at a young age, I think is critical. We used to do the ABC scriptures.
Yeah.
A merry heart does good like a medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bones. Be ye kind one to another. And, you think that's silly, but I remember at Duncan Ridge when I was doing that by myself, getting to a real low spot and just trying to keep moving. And I started quoting those scriptures, and quicken me, O Lord, according to your word, that I may live. Just jumped out at me. And that scripture ain't talking nothing about running, but it still encouraged me and built me up. So,
yeah, I think I've certainly argued in front of our kids and about things that we shouldn't have, but I think I've always tried to make it a point to resolve it in front of them as well. So even if we do argue in front of them, then I think it's important to resolve it in front of them too. Like you were talking about on y'all's Sunday thing, it may even be days later, but I do have a bad habit of, if something pops up that I don't agree with, I'm going to deal with it right then. I don't even want to talk about it later. If it's later, we're just going to not talk about it at all. Which, I'm not saying that's right, but I think that, how else do kids learn how to resolve conflict? I mean, you're gonna have conflict in life, and you're gonna disagree. And so, certainly there are some things you should not talk about, whether it's argument or not, in front of kids. But then, like, there are probably some good disagreements for them to hear and hear how you agree to disagree or come to an agreement on, mutually. But
that you done had a whooping. You ain't getting out of telling about you getting a whooping. You've had to have had a whooping.
Man, I really don't remember.
Rule follower.
Huh?
Rule follower.
Mom acts like I was just an angel. All the stories she ever tells of me, and that Chad was just a deviant.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, that's how she talks about us. And so, no, I mean, I'm sure there may have been a time or two, but I don't remember it.
Yeah.
But I mean, me and Chad, we fought all the time, just us two.
Right.
And halftime it was probably something I shouldn't have been doing, or, you know, aggravating him, spurring it on.
Right.
I used to prop up I used to get a big old thick book, and I would prop it between the door and the door frame, so that when he come in the door, it would fall, it hit him on the head or whatever. And I remember one time he had a big old glass of milk, and he pushed the door open with that milk and brought his hand back, and that book come and knocked that glass of milk out of his hand, son. He got so mad.
Did you get in trouble for it?
Nah,
You didn't.
I did things that I should have gotten in trouble
He's the
for,
baby.
but I
Yeah.
didn't.
Right.
But yeah, we used to. I cut Chow with a rock one time. He come up on me, eased up on me like he was going to do harm to me, and I said, "You intend on doing me harm?" He said, "Yep." And then I said, "Well, I'm about to do you some harm." And I picked up a sharp rock, cut him deep right on his forearm.
Yeah.
I took his truck, backed it out in the roads, doing some. We had gravel. We lived on a gravel road. Just power braked it in that gravel road. He just put new tires on it. So I've done lots of things I should have got my butt tore up for, but
Great.
they just overlooked it.
He's the baby.
Ann always made fun of me disciplining the boys, you know, to give them a spanking. She'd say I'd rear way back like I was gonna give them a good one, and then when I'd get closer to butt, I'd put the brakes on and just tap.
Well, I like your other methods of.
Well, that's one. You could call it too tender-hearted, whatever you want. I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't. And I could tell they weren't getting anything from it. Well, when they got into wrestling or wasn't learning the lesson that we wanted them to learn, rather is a better way to put it. When they got into wrestling, I seen that wall sits, they didn't like them, and push-ups, they didn't like them.
Holding books out.
You know, they'd make them stand there and they'd put weights in their hand, you know, and hold them. They didn't like that. And they was doing that 3-4 times a week, every night wrestling. So you get in trouble, you want a 2-minute wall sit, keep getting in trouble. Well, there you go. You got you a 2-minute.
Yep.
And I'm talking about that would put the brakes on some stuff. So in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. You spank them 5 or 6 times over the same thing, and it just, because I wasn't putting into it what I should. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That there's all different kinds of ways.
Absolutely.
And man, that people will butcher you up and holler child abuse. I was a police officer, Blake was, and your neighbor will call the law on you in a heartbeat if that kid whimpers the wrong way that they don't think,
Yep.
or if they hear you holler or whatever else. So unfortunately, there's a fine line that
Yeah.
is there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And I know, as you know, being an administrator, ain't all school they're mandated reporters.
Oh, yeah,
If
absolutely.
they see something, they have to report it. Like what is the parameters on actually being a good mandated reporter? Because I know there's bad ones out
Yeah,
there.
it's the health and safety of the child. So,
Yeah.
so it's not, you know, I've even been in a meeting with an agent, you know, that
Right.
talked about whether or not, you know, whether they were brought in, and it wasn't that the child got a spanking. It wasn't that, you know, they basically articulated, you know, on the bottom using an appropriate instrument was fine, but
Right.
the situation they were investigating was a little bit different. So, you know, there's certain parameters and guidance that those agents have to say whether or not, and then it, you know, if it's creating emotional harm, there's other resources, because sometimes parents are disciplining, you know, when their emotions are guiding their discipline. And that's another thing. And, you know, it's kind of funny, you know, when you have self-control, even you can be angry and you're still not gonna, you know,
Exactly.
but if you don't have self-control, you know, you're going to be abusive, and it can be language. It can be, you know, anything that, you know, if that child's reporting something that environment is unsafe. But you know, the standard, and I think as a parent spanking a young child for, you know, just spanking, not beating them, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody's going to have any problems with it, but you never know.
Yeah.
If it gets reported one way,
Yeah.
and, you know, kids talking about, so, you know, you don't want to put yourself in a bad situation. But I always told people, you know, somebody said something about a kid saying, you know, I'll just call defects on you. And I said, well, you
Yeah.
call them, and when they come to the house, I tell them, well, you better take them, because this is how I'm.
Yeah.
You know, we have to take responsibility for our kids and do what we're supposed to do with them. And I do want to emphasize, I don't think that's the only way to discipline. And again, I think that's at a young age, that's a reasonable tool. I think as kids get older, they're able to reason more.
Right.
You don't need,
Yeah.
you know,
You can
other
talk-
things like you're
talk to 'em.
talking about, that you can, you know, somebody's doing something, kid's not doing something right, using their phone to, you know, wasting too much time on their phone. So you take the phone away.
It's like
you know?
going from the shock
Yeah.
to the beep on a shock collar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even like, you know, we've had times where there were certain things we took away that, you know, like vehicle privileges that, well, yeah, you can drive to school, but that's it.
Cell
You know,
phones
stuff like
and
that. You know,
whatever.
there's, I think the key, even like in the conversations when we talked about, you know, what kind of conversations you have in front of the kids, I think all of those, you know, go back to the heart.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about, you know, the rule, like in the Bible, the commandments and all of those. Well, why does the Bible say, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it flow the issues of life? So you're always trying to, you know, if you're disciplining on the surface, and it's just about what people are seeing, then are you really training a child up in the way they should go?
Yeah.
And when they're old, they won't depart, because it's a heart issue. So what
Yeah.
you talked about talking to Blakely about with dishonor, would
Yeah.
you do this, wear this in front of Jesus? I think it's important.
Well, I do want to address Corn. Chili, he's gotten to laughing at you again.
You was laughing too.
Because I'm laughing at Chili
Well, you told another joke.
What I say?
during a serious conversation.
Did I tell a joke, Paul? If Paul noticed a joke, then I.
Oh gosh,
will say
I'm
I
glad
told a
Blake
joke.
addressed it, because now I can stop laughing. I mean,
What was the joke?
Talk to him, Chili. Give him a counseling.
I mean, it almost derailed the show.
We almost ended it right here.
What was it?
We're
I mean,
about to the point we're going to end this if you can't stop telling jokes.
What was it?
About the parameters or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Look, things like that aren't usually funny, but because of what happened on Monday, they're going to be extremely funny.
Well,
for a
y'all
while.
two need to get a grip. Well, when Chad gets back, they will be HELL to pay if y'all don't straighten up, because I will tell him.
I'm about to shut it down.
I will
if you
tell him.
can't stop doing that.
Jeez.
You see how goofy Chili is?
No, I'm not goofy. You told a joke.
Is there any truth that only kids that have been raised up by themselves, are just weird and goofy? Is there any truth to that?
Dang.
You think that's true?
No,
Weird,
and,
goofy.
and in all seriousness, you know, you hear that. Oh, he's an only child. He's doing that. He's spoiled because he's. Why would an only child get something any more or any less than someone who has
Because
multiple?
he's the only
siblings?
one there.
Well, I get that, but like, what could Chili's mom and dad possibly have done to him that you didn't get?
Send him to private school.
You
Private
coulda went to
Christian
Well,
private-
how do you know it's something to do with your parents parenting you a certain way? It could just
Only
be
because
the.
you getting like you have the opportunity to get way kind of more of attention when you're younger.
Oh,
and
we
that's
definitely did.
purely me thinking on what me and you was talking the other day about. If you don't get certain types of nourishments
Yeah.
and attention and stuff when you're really, really young,
Mhm.
are you do the majority of only children get too much of that? Or I mean, is that even a thing, or is that just something wants to say?
Basically, Corn saying is Chili weird and goofy because he was only child, or is that coincidence? That seems like the question.
I'll go with that.
Well, I think.
The question was to Paul.
Oh,
by the way.
well, you look at me the entire time. I will weigh in on, since I'm the only
I wanna hear
child
you
here.
weigh in.
Since I'm the only child here, that's a fact, right? Yeah.
That is a
Yeah.
fact.
That's a stereotype.
Has somebody said that to you before?
Oh
though?
yeah, all the time you get told. But
I think it's a good question.
But that's a stereotype. I mean, there's plenty of only children that if they didn't tell you they were, you would never know they were, and you wouldn't think they were weird at all. And there's
Right.
people that have siblings that you think are pretty dang weird. So I think that's just
agree.
I don't think there's a thing about, oh, you're an only child, that means you're this way.
Right.
Well, you fit the stereotype.
Well, that's
I mean, when I first met you, I knew this cat's the only child.
well, I mean, that may be, but not everybody that is an only child acts like me.
No, that's true.
That's true.
Now let's hear the expert.
Yeah.
But I'm not an expert on that for sure. But
You're an expert on dealing with children.
Well, we do.
Sure.
Like even when Caleb and Krista had Blair, we were like, "You're going to have another one, aren't you?" You know, kind of thing. So I think it's not a judgmental stereotype from my standpoint. This is my own personal opinion. This isn't a professional opinion. As a professional, I can't say that I've necessarily seen anything different just because the child was an only child. But you can say that there's some social work throughs that happen with a child in a home with another child that they're having to work through.
Yeah.
If those children are of a similar age. If you got another, a kid that's, way older.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like having a third parent. It might be more confusing, right? So yeah, I think there's definitely some social reality to that, but it's kind of like full moons in behavior. Like you try to tell me a full moon don't change behavior of kids. They say research says that's not true. I don't think they're getting.
Mom says the same thing.
I don't think they're getting it. It absolutely does.
Yeah.
So according to, what our perception is, and that could be the same thing, is people perceive that because they know somebody and they automatically attribute those prejudices. That's what prejudice is. It's like, hey, but I think it's all about training and environment. And that environment can be same thing can be said about a kid going to a private school versus public school or being homeschooled, or it all depends on the type of program and what the parents get. Do you get what you need to get out of that? So I think the ultimate reality is it doesn't really matter, because eventually, I think research. I read a book. I don't remember if it was Outliers. One of the books I read talked about a really high achievement level from only children because of the investment so I think there is something to the fact that those parents really can invest specific attention into, but then there might be other things they may not get as much of, but eventually you can get whatever you want as an adult, because if you didn't have that socialization, you didn't have as much opportunity to work some of those things out earlier, eventually you can mature and do that. Right. So
why did Jeff and Tracy have just you? Do you know?
Oh, you'd have to ask them. If
you've never asked them, why didn't you have any more?
Yeah, I think people ask if I ever wanted a sibling. It never even crossed my mind that I could have had a sibling. Like, I don't know. The answer to that is I didn't even consider, like, I guess I'm not mentally handicapped. I understand the fact that you can have another sibling.
Yeah, some people do that.
but like, that didn't even cross my mind as an option. I just remember being little, and I think if they had told me I was having a brother or a sister one day, I would have went, "What?"
Yeah, that would have been.
I would have freaked me out, So no, I never wanted one, never thought about that. And I think I think what my mom has said, if I remember right, is she had me kind of later in life. I don't remember. She was mid-30s. Later 30, so they waited a long time because they were married at like 20, so waited a long time, and then she said they didn't really want kids right when they got married, and then that kind of continued, and then she said as she got into her 30s, she just kind of all of a sudden really wanted a child, and they had me, and then I just don't think she had wanted to, I just think that's all it was. Once you have this, you're just kind of like, that's all I need,
I remember when we had a boy and a girl, I was thinking, oh yeah, I guess that's, wraps this up, but I didn't, I didn't feel like, oh, we ought to be done necessarily, but that's what you hear a lot of times. Well, they don't have, so my sister had 3 girls, and then later on they had a boy, and then, but Amy'd have 20. She would have had kids. Like I had to go take care of that, because I was like, we can't afford 20 kids. It's hard enough with 4, but it is a unique dynamic either way. I think that's the beauty of things. I think in my maturity, I think earlier on in life, I always thought I would have had that bias toward, only child. But some of my friends that were only children, I really enjoyed going to their house because they had good stuff.
Well, my mom is she's such a motherly figure. I don't know how to
Yeah.
word that, but like she is to everybody, you
She
know,
is,
like
yeah.
other kids, like that's how she, but so it kind of in a way surprises me that she's not one that would like want 20 kids, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
she didn't. I think she is that, like, in a way, like one was good enough to, like, she just, you know, that she's wanted to be a mother to,
Yeah.
wasn't about like, oh, I want 5 kids. It was just, I want to be a mother. And once you have
Scratched
one,
her
you
itch.
are a mother. And then, yeah, once you're this good, how do you have another?
There you go. You back to the full moon. When you was policing, you didn't think on the full moon that people was getting crunk.
It was always wild. And Floyd.
Animals do.
I'm telling you, people do too.
Well, animals for sure do. I mean, that's like, I don't think there's any debate about that.
Right.
You know, mammals.
Yeah, when I was policing, if it and you know, I'm sure there were some nights because it was a full moon, we would be hyper focused on that fact. But I'm telling you, there's something to that.
So you never mind. That throws it all out the window.
Yeah.
Some
Y'all
nights you wouldn't even notice it was a full moon.
No, you
and
just said you were
some-
hyper focused on that it was a full moon.
Oh, Johnny P. Wright would come in the next morning. You'd be like, man, it was off the chain, dude. And he'd be like, well, it was a full moon. You'd be like, oh, nonetheless.
That only happened one time.
Oh, so you were done talking about it after that?
Yeah, after that, I was done talking about it. So, like, what would you attribute? Like, there's a difference between a lot of things we was just talking about is like making mistakes as parenting and learning. What that doesn't mean you're not a good.
Where'd you get
parent.
these questions? Are you Larry King? How did you?
I've been a parent for 25 years.
Okay.
Chili. For 25 years, bub. And you know, I volunteered and mentored with the Truth in Nature organization, and they minister to, you know, children, boys of fatherless homes. And I mean, you can tell a difference in those children. Not that they're bad children. I'm not saying that at all, but they have some needs and some desires that they're not getting fulfilled. So it is somewhat important to me, all joking aside.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between being a bad parent and a parent that's making just mistakes and that's learning, even from the time a brand spanking new baby all the way up to whenever.
Like ignorance versus neglect.
Yeah, but I think some of it though is with some confusion. I want to give my kids more than what I had when I was younger. And I think a lot of the problems with that is they get focused on materialistic things, and they're not actually even giving their kids what they did have when they were younger, because they're missing out. They get like sacrifice mixed up. So they give up something for something that they perceive to be more important, when actually what's being more important is being there and teaching the kid. And especially now, like with the phones, like you let that iPad raise your kid if you wanted to, and you're going to end up getting what's y'all's perspective on that?
Well, I think, you know, to me, you know, we have meetings, and if we have a big PTA meeting, it's you kind of have the choir there. You know, you're preaching to the choir because those are the parents that are involved, their kids at this chorus concert, whatever. But we have to release the kids, and then the parents are there, and so it's kind of a time, you know, I need to use some time up so that there's time between the kids get back to the classroom and the parents go pick them up and all. So I'll talk to them about, you know, the school a little bit and all. But one of the things I say all the time that just came to me several years ago, you know, everybody always says kids these days.
Yeah.
You would not believe how wonderful our kids are. Like all you ever hear about is like, but that's 1% of that population. And that 1%, man, it might be drastic what they're doing. But man, we have so many great kids. And I tell parents, kids these days are a result of adults these days.
Yeah.
And we have to be mindful of that. And like kids are on their phones all the time because we're on our phones all the time.
Yeah.
You know, kids are, so the stuff, if, you know, Jocko wrote that book and he says, you know, there's no bad teams, only bad leaders. And so when you're seeing those things, you got to address them for what they really are and deal with them. And Lord knows I'm still, it doesn't matter how old your kids are, you're still an influence in their life. And they're influencing your life. My
Yeah.
kids influence me. My kids challenge me. And then like last year at the 100-mile race, some things you just have to want for yourself. But one of the things about that was because they were all there, but one, he couldn't be there. He was in Alabama. He FaceTimed me in the middle. That was a family and team effort. And that's what life is. And I think so much of the time, when you talk about mistakes or those kind of things, like I would love to, I have family members that can provide a lot more stuff for their kids than I can. And have, there are things that my mother-in-law was able to provide for me that I can't provide for my kids.
Right.
In things. And so, it's trying not to be a cop out. It's one thing that has always been kind of a burr in my saddle, so to speak, a thorn in my flesh of, I make decent money now as a principal. It's not, it's not bad. But I didn't manage money well as a younger child. I didn't know how to manage money for some reason. And my dad's great at it. I don't know how I missed that, but that's something that does even haunt me and irritate me about how, man, I wish I could do this, this, and this. Not buy them a brand new vehicle or those kinds of things, but be able to help them get a start here, get a start there with more than I can. And so there's always, I think everything we're talking about has balance. There, even a parent that's really affluent and able to get their kid anything in the world, how they manage that is so important. And what you value and what you spend time doing is that's what your kids are seeing. And, I'm really amazed at how resilient kids are with our parenting mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even, parents that have had some significant issues where they lost their kid and then they come back. And I've seen it in school where, it's just amazing to watch. I've seen it where a kid had such a struggle with really bad situations at home, and now grandparents raising them, and seeing them go from, having to see me all the time to I get to go see them, because I have to go see them to be able to see them.
Right.
So it's, I think as a society, we really have to be careful to, not just do like we do with generalities that we make about people, but be the best versions of ourselves we can be in front of those people. And golly, love them. Love overcomes a multitude of sins, the Bible tells us. So, if you're a parent and you feel like, oh man, my kid's doing this, you can't go back. You can't change the past. You can't impact the future. All you can do is be present and impact now. And what you sow in now, the more, best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is today. So what are you doing today to whether you're a parent or not, if you have influence in kids' lives, you think about them jokers going to be paying our Social Security. I joke about that all the time with my staff. I'm like, you better love those kids and take care of them and teach them so they'll be ready because they're going to be paying your Social Security if it's around.
What do you think? Something a parenting technique or something that your mom and dad used to do for you when you was little that maybe you do now?
I don't know. It's always hard to think of how your parents parented because you didn't pay attention to it growing up. It was just like happening to you, and you didn't really notice it. But I don't know. I don't know what. Mom and dad both spent a lot of time with us. Dad, once we got a little older and started hunting and doing stuff, he would take us camping and hunting and turkey hunting, deer hunting, whatever, riding four-wheelers. We did a lot of things like that with him. And then mom did a lot of stuff with us, I remember when we were younger. But as we started hunting and stuff, I remember her taking us hunting a time or two and still doing things with us. But, you know, I remember her taking us to Kennesaw Mountain and hiking and running and doing a bunch of stuff, going to the skating rink, the school stuff, all of those things. And so I think, I mean, really, if you just would have boiled parenting down to something and you had, well, you know, what's the best thing you can do? I think it's just spend time with your kids, you know, like just quality. Like you don't even have to tell them anything. I don't care how you whoop them. I don't care what you teach them. Like if you just spend time with them, like not just be there and be on your phone, but to actually do the thing with them and go out and do stuff, they're going to learn. And you are at the spot you're at because of what you've done in life. And if you're to the point that you're wanting and going to spend time with your kids, you're a decent person as far as a person could be. And they're going to pick up on those things and take from you. And then aside from that, I think all you can do is just focus on yourself. I mean, it sounds selfish, but the better you are, the more time you spend on yourself, the better it is for the rest of your family, because they're going to take away from what you're doing. It's like, you know, we try to find these parenting hacks and these things, but really you just need to be a better person. And then just be around your family.
Yeah.
Be present with them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not really a parenting tactic, but when I think back, I think, you know, if there's anything I remember, it's that.
Yeah. Anything you specific remember about
I'm not a parent.
your
Cool.
mom and dad that did for you when you was little, like something that sticks out, something that maybe was like, dang.
Well, I think this sticks out to me today because, like when I say today, just in this point in my life, because I don't know why, but I guess just being around, anytime you're around anybody's kids, all I've started noticing anybody ever does is tell them no to everything. And then you think about, well, what did I hear whenever I go to school, and what do teachers and people you hear a lot of? It's no, don't do this, don't do this. And we've kind of touched on this earlier, but that's just something I've actually been thinking of the whole time. Is I've noticed that is just this constant flood of no's. Don't do this, don't do this. And if you boil it down, or you really condense it all and look at it, how much of it was it necessary to even tell them no to? You started saying no to everything because they disobey and you correctly told them no and corrected them. But then they do something that just slightly annoyed you maybe, and you go, no, 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 no. And it's like, if that's all you ever hear growing up, that does something to you. I think it makes you start to think you cannot do anything right. And anything you try to do is always wrong. And there's just a fine line, I think, that my parents did really well with. I didn't hear no all the time growing up. And I don't mean I never got corrected.
Right.
Maybe, I mean, I'm not saying I wasn't spoiled, but like, it's not that they never told me no or corrected me or taught me what was right and wrong, but I didn't like if I tried to do something a certain way and it may not have been how they would have done it, it wasn't always just no, 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 don't do that like that. Don't do this, don't do that.
And mostly what a kid's asking you, at least my kids, is, will you do this with me? Will you do that with me? I mean, sometimes can I have dessert, right? I mean, but if you think of what a kid's asking, most of the time they just want, at least my kids, they're just wanting you to do stuff with them other than like, can I have this?
Yeah. I mean, it's just all I hear is like, will you do this with me? No. Well, can I do this? No. Or they start doing something a certain way. It's not hurting nothing. It's not, I'm not saying disobeying and you don't say no, but like you're just trying something a certain way. And it's like, no, don't do it that way. It's like, you got to let kids do stuff. I mean, you correct when when they're doing something disrespectful to you or to somebody else, or, putting themselves at risk or doing something dangerous, tell them no and correct it. But like, not everything needs to be no. Stop doing that. Like, you have to just let kids be kids to some degree. That's a fine line. I'm not saying I would know how to navigate that, but that's one thing I think my parents did really well is I didn't hear no for everything.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't mean like, I heard yes every time I asked for something. I'm saying like I didn't like, you know, go get something from the fridge and hear no, you know.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, what? I mean, I just
Right.
Almost becomes like the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah,
You hear it
yeah,
so
you hear it
much, you just
constantly.
kinda tune it out.
yeah, your no can't be your yes can't be yes and your no can't be no if all you hear is no.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, that
like
makes sense.
I don't know. That's just something that
What
I've
about you?
noticed.
I think my grandfather was with me all the time. So like you said, spending a lot of time, and my mom just showed complete unconditional love, you know, whether I messed up or did whatever. I got my whoopings, you know, when I was real young up until I got the ones for throwing the crab apple. It was just complete unconditional love. But I had also that my grandfather, the father figure, who was, you know, a deacon of a foot washing Baptist church that just was rock solid completely. And he helped the entire family if someone needed help. So I got just really good examples. I think was just the main thing was just real good examples. Anything in particular from your childhood, Paul?
Same thing with my grandfather and my dad's twin brother. They farmed together, so I kind of was around them a lot when I was working on the farm. So work ethic was huge. And like even we have a family mission statement and family vision statement. And when we set that, even the kids, like Natalie, her word was diligence. So like hard work's always been something that came from my granddad, my dad, and my dad's twin brother. And man, my dad was always working hard and serving. He'd come home. He made farm real estate loans. He worked for Production Credit Association for a while in Moultrie. And I remember he'd come home with a suit on and he'd take everything off and get in his dingy work clothes and take us out to the cotton field to pull weeds. And Dad didn't need to pull weeds. He was teaching us. And you know, that's something that stood out from me, from my dad, and from my mom was just a voracious appetite for the word. Just she's the one who really kind of instilled the love of the word of God into me. And and then, you know, those were the two. I would say those are the things that really stood out. And they were definitely in unity. Like if I got in trouble, and Mom didn't feel like whatever she did was conclusion, that I did get a lot of whoopings.
Yeah.
One time I got a whooping. My sister and I went walking somewhere we shouldn't have gone. And my cousin had asked her mom, and we thought she asked my mom too, but she didn't. And my mom was absolutely floored. So we go into the bedroom and Shannon and I are going to get a whooping, and Shannon is crying already before we're going to get a whooping. I'm used to them. So I'm standing there getting ready to get my whooping. And Shannon is just like, she's not just crying. I'm like, she don't need a whooping. And I was like, Mom, I'll take her whooping. She said, shut up, boy, you ain't Jesus. And she swears she don't remember doing that or saying that, but she did. It was pretty funny.
Well, one other thing that you asked, like what they did well, is both of my parents were who they asked me to be. Right. They were who they wanted me to be.
Yeah, I get you.
You know, and to me that sums it up pretty well too. You know, whatever is a good job as a parent, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Miles Monroe says leadership is becoming yourself to benefit others. So I think that's really like the integrity of who you are. Like, you know, we've talked about that a lot. I think that's the key thing, for sure.
I wanted to touch on one more thing, and then we can wrap this conversation up unless y'all want to keep going. But
we need to do those announcements.
Yeah, we'll do that after this, bub.
Yeah, it was you threw off the order, but
so last year, I've been blessed enough to have my nieces and nephews in my life to a point to where I've definitely helped raise them as well. And we did the bike ride last May.
Yeah,
last May. And so as we was going along in that bike ride, it got to a certain point where Griffith G was having some problems. And because he was indeed my responsibility, I'm helping raise him. It was to the point to where if he said I need to quit, then I'm going to have to call somebody to come get him. I'm going to have to essentially, the only help I can give him is to let him quit. That's the only help I could give him because of the responsibility I have for him. But because Blake was there, Chad, Brooke, Jen, James, Kat, they were able to like let me remove myself from the situation and make a decision that G was okay to continue on. He was just hurting. So I realized that not only with my children or my nieces and nephews, or even maybe my friends or whatnot, like I may not be the person that needs to give somebody the help. And that was a real big lesson. But I also learned because of the people that was surrounded me, like the community that was there, the help was going to be there for said person. So just a conversation on who you might have had around you that you did get stuff from other than your parents, or who you allow to or not to be around your children, and the same for you. Because that was like, that hit me like a sack of bricks, dude. I was like, dang, I really wasn't the person that could help G, because had I helped him, he wouldn't have completed the mission. He wouldn't have got what he come for. But I knew I trusted all them enough to say, okay, yeah, he's done, or no, he could keep going. But I couldn't tell him that. It would have been, okay, Buck, come pick up Griffith. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
So who's somebody, maybe Chili, that was around your family? Maybe it was another family member.
Well, I'm chuckling because I think what you just said is really good, but you swung it to the person who my experience was just totally different. I mean, I really don't have, like, I already know that I don't have that. Like, I was really close to my extended family, like my grandparents and aunts and uncles and everything. But like in that capacity that you're saying, I mean, it was my parents.
Right.
And they, I think they did a good job. Like they handled it. I mean, I don't, I didn't have that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just be making somebody up,
right?
Really, because maybe it's an only child thing, but
weird.
But like, yeah, I spent all of my time with my parents. I mean, I didn't, it was just very rare. Like I never spent the night at anybody else's house, or, was close to any of my friends' parents. I mean, I had friends over the years that I liked their parents and respected them and knew them and talked to them. But like, I didn't have that.
Yeah. Paul?
For me, growing up, I said grandfather and uncle. And I had, coaches growing up through life. Cause, when I went to college, I majored in business because that's what my dad did. So I was like, I didn't know what to major in. And then I thought, well, what do I want to be and what do I want to do? And probably the coaches in my life influenced me to choose my career path. But for my children, I remember specifically talking to people like our youth pastor, John, and saying, Caleb needs another voice in his life. Our youth pastor we had at the previous church, David Thaxton, man, what a great voice that was able to speak into my kids' life. Of course, they're coaches, and that's good and bad. But even the bad is good, because I'm still at home. I can correct those things when he's got some psycho coach that's, and then, so, I think that's a great, having other people. Sometimes it's good that your kids have a voice in their life that's not consistent with yours. And you're there in the presence of that to be able to discern and say, yeah, I understand that. But, and so those were definitely, I think coaches and teachers have influenced lives in my kids' life. And I think that's been, our church really does have, there's a lot of people in our church who have different experiences and different relationships. And then, I think Caleb, and having other people he worked with, extended family has helped him. So I think it just depends on the relationships, that you have. Being involved in sports and those kind of things for all of my kids was pretty. And then Natalie, she was involved in cross country. So her cross country coach was definitely somebody in her life that spoke into her life. Youth ministers. I'm trying to think if there's anybody, it's really neat the kind of relationship they have. Like, Rachel, there's a really unique relationship between aunts and uncles and kids. And I know when I was growing up, I felt there were things that my aunt, my dad's twin brother's wife, she was redheaded, and I called her, I said, I always call her my favorite redheaded aunt because I didn't have any other redheaded aunts, but she was fiery, but she really, when mom and dad would go out of town, I'd stay at home to work on the farm. I'd stay with her. And, I felt like there were things that if I might not be comfortable sharing with my parents, but I'd feel comfortable sharing with her. I would feel like if I'm communicating weakness and those kind of things, and it wasn't that my parents weren't open to that. It's just, that was my perception, So having that youth pastor, another voice in the lives of your children, I think is really awesome. Like what you said, there's other people out there supporting this. And sometimes we only see it from one angle, and other people can see it and they're detached emotionally from the situation and are really looking at it from a logical standpoint. When your kid's not playing on the baseball field, that's good for your kid to learn.
Yeah.
Hey, I might, even if they're, we as parents say, oh, they're clearly better, but we're biased no matter what. I've been on both ends of that as the coach and as a parent. And, those are great experiences because there's opportunities for failure with somebody who's done that more than they have. I always tell my teachers, you're the best reader in the class. You're the best mathematician in the class. And I tell the kids, don't be distracted by the kids sitting around you. They're equally as dumb as you are. And they all laugh at me, but it's a reality. So,
yeah, I think probably the main person that set like aside from mom and dad that set a godly example will be Robbie Hall.
Yeah.
He was, he's just always, his whole life, he's still the same as he was when we were a kid. He's just always just been consistent. The decisions he made, the things he said, you could tell that he had he stood for something, which was Christ, and his decisions and actions were based on that. The way he would talk, the things he would decide to go to, just the way he carried himself was that way. So I think as far as like a godly example outside of parents would be him for sure. But then, there's people like, even you spent a lot of time with me as a kid. Tommy Rogers, he took me fishing all the time and took me hunting and doing stuff. And so there were still other people, spending time with me. But everybody was in a different part of life, right? Like you were a different person back then than you are today. And so the things that you taught me were different than the things Robbie taught me, and were different than things Tommy taught me. And but those were, the three men that I could think of. But it's interesting you ask that, and then you go on in your life and you feel like that goes away. But then like Paul has spent so much, like just unreasonable amounts of time with me just through running and different things that we've done together, and that continues. But in today's world, this world of coaching and mentor has just, man, I can't stand it. I can't stand for people to talk about life coaches and mentor, because it's gotten so corny. It's like everybody that has mentor in their bio, if they have it in there, just go ahead and count them that they ain't. Just count it that they ain't a coach or a mentor, because that's what they're trying. That's an extreme statement, right? But majority of them are trying to be something that they're not. Those people that come along in your life, they just come along. Like, I didn't seek out Paul as a mentor,
right,
or a coach in my life. We just started hanging out together, and it just happened. And so I'm not saying you can't seek those things out, but if you're paying somebody for that, they're doing it because you're paying them, not because they really care about you, and they will try to help you, but it's because you're paying them. The minute you quit paying them, they stop the service. I hadn't paid Paul a dime for anything he's ever done for me, and he still keeps doing it. And so, and Robbie's the same way, and you're the same way. And so those, as we get older and adults, there are people that are in different stages of life that are more mature than you, that you can learn just as much from as you did when you were a kid. So.
Y'all ever learned anything from Blake?
Oh, I
Oh,
learn
yeah.
stuff from Blake all the time.
So you have paid.
Yeah.
One of the
Wow.
reasons, that's
point.
the beautiful thing with a real relationship. We like to use the word mentors and life coaches and all that kind of stuff. I mean, coaching is coach. I mean, but the reality is when you teach, you benefit
Yeah.
too. And like you're like I was joking. We were at a youth retreat and those kids were so hungry. People talk about kids being like a sponge. I was like, those kids were like vacuum cleaners, And that's the thing. There's things that when I said that about finance and stuff like that, I've shared this with Blake. There's things that he's done in his life at a young age that it took me a lot longer to get there. So certainly, some folks learn them a lot quicker than others. And so anytime you're able to pour into a young person's life, so I say, kids these days are a result of adults these days. And doing that yourself as an adult, it pays great dividends to you. It's even kids that I just spend a little bit of time with, sometimes like at a youth retreat or, in the hallway talking to a kid, it's amazing because it's love. It's one of the principles of just, hey, I'm stopping and giving you some attention here. And then you get blown away with how much that means to them,
Yeah.
Good deal. You were supposed to do the announcements at the
Yeah, you
beginning.
just kind of rolled
the
over
beginning.
that. And, our only chance to announce this is when Chad's not here. That's why I want to be sure to get it in. It's about our sale on the website. You guys remember we launched that sale a while back.
He doesn't know about it.
And, well, he knew then, but you remember how mad he was. And he was
He doesn't think it's still going.
Yeah, no. So he's not here today. And what, you're going to take it down Friday, Chili?
Yeah, Friday at midnight's the plan. But it's going to be at some point around there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
We'll
gonna
call
come
it
down
Friday at midnight.
So if y'all interested in buying any more 307 merchandise, we got everything.
The first sale we've ever done.
Yeah.
Still going.
So this is a deep cut sale. And Chad's it ain't no just a little piddly yub sale. It's a deep cut.
Right.
And so Chad, he wasn't real happy about it, but he's out of town for a while and he don't know. And so we got that open still. So that's the only thing I had for announcements on the housekeeping end.
Well, I think we should also mention that this show today is brought to you by Barbell Apparel. And, we were talking about it before. What is your personally favorite piece from Barbell?
The lightweight jogger.
You stole my.
That's mine.
No, it
bub.
isn't.
By golly, it is too.
What's yours, Blake?
I think it's probably the Ranger shorts.
Really?
Yeah, I mean in the summertime, in the wintertime, I'm hitting them lightweight joggers hard, and the jeans.
Well, yeah,
because it's winter, but
I like it all, but I like the jeans. I like this new flannel, but I would think my favorite has got to be the ultralight joggers, the new ones that they came with that improved waistband. Now you just totally upended this whole deal because you just stole mine. That was supposed to be mine. You were supposed to have your own unique one.
Nonetheless, ain't this Barbell?
Yeah, it's a flannel. That's not my favorite. That's probably number 2 or 3. The ultralight joggers are my favorite.
I wore the joggers and the blue jeans this morning at the same time because it was.
Well, that's weird.
Do you have your shorts on too? You usually put them on the top of everything.
That's, an odd thing to do.
Well, it was really cold outside.
Well, okay.
So I put the joggers on under my breeches.
What do you like, Paul?
I got a couple of pairs of shorts. I got the Atlas. What's the ones I just got that have the
Adapt?
37? Yeah, the
Oh,
Adapt.
yeah.
I've worn those like last weekend. We had the snow days and stuff, so I was working out in the bay. I've worked out in them and run in them. I've loved those, and I've got 2 other pairs of the.
I do like the Adapt. I like that high cut for running, and they're a little bit heavier, so a little more durable, maybe in the gym or.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Is in the gym, I really enjoyed them. They're very flexible, but they're a little bit different fit than like an average pants. They actually are somewhat fitted. I'm a big old boy up in there, so I had to say I usually wear large and everything. I had to send them back and get an extra large. So, but yeah, those are good. We bought. Joshua loves the hoodie.
Oh yeah,
he's got the kids love the hoodie and the shorts. So, and I ain't gotten the joggers yet, but I know they would love those. I have to, maybe that's next Christmas.
Yeah,
Well, I
that
wasn't a
one.
big joggers kind of guy. Like
Yeah,
I didn't know
me
what
neither. Not at
joggers
all.
were. It seemed weird to me, joggers. But then
Then you realize you didn't have to jog when you had them on.
well, the first I ever wore was that pair that Chad wore in Cocodona. You know, that was the
Yeah.
original, like whatever that was. I don't even know what that was called.
Mark 1 Mod A.
Mark 1 Mod A. And then now they've come out with the ultralight. That is definitely my favorite piece.
That's mine.
Well, anyway, check it out, barbellapparel.com. We've got our own Be Hard When It's whatever the saying
7
is.
line.
3 of 7 line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would just
In the
call it
summer,
3
I
of
wear
7
that that tank top with that on it about every day. But
Showing them noodles off.
I wasn't done. That's barbellapparel.com. Check them out, barbellapparel.com. Wildfires ravaging LA. The Pacific Palisades are on fire. What do you say about that, Corn?
That's bad business over
It's
there.
real bad.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what to say about it as far as a news broadcast, other than it's really bad. And do you find it disrespectful to the people who lost their homes to talk about the mismanagement of the land in California as being the driving force for why that even happened?
I mean, reality is reality.
I mean, really,
And,
because
I mean, it's not like, hey, you live there, so that's what you get. No,
Right,
it shouldn't
right.
be taken as that by no means. But that is why those fires are raging the way they are.
I mean, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
but
of certain things put in place or
But it-
certain things not allowed to be put in place due to climate change.
But it's awful. They're going through that. That's
These fires are way worse than they need to be.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There ain't no sign of stopping them.
I'm not sure about.
I don't know where they're
that.
at with containing them.
I don't know.
Well, you're a news reporter.
Well, but sometimes you just don't have all the news. I mean,
How are you not out on site, like getting boots on the ground,
we have not had any boots on the ground with
moving up and down again?
anything. But now the biggest national news is the inauguration coming up on January 20th,
5 days.
5 days away. I wanted to know if any of y'all thought that how that's going to go.
You think it's gonna be big?
I think it's going to be big, but is it going to go smooth? Corners are going to be big obstacles in the way.
There's going to be your normal protest, but it's going to go smooth.
I agree.
Yeah. It's going to go smooth. What do you think, Paul?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm expecting we're going to see what somebody wants us to see.
There you go.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, let's kick it over to Cornbread with local news.
Well, yesterday in Paulding County, Georgia, Colonial Pipeline number 1 started leaking.
Oh man,
That's the one we like. We like that one because it has gasoline in it, and it totes gasoline from Texas all the way to North Carolina. So they
Really?
shut that booger off, and they expect it to be fixed January the 17th.
are they running gasoline like you putting your cars through that?
Oh yeah, yeah,
So they get it in Texas,
yeah,
and then they're pumping it,
Yeah.
all the way down that line to the Carolinas.
yeah. Colonial has 2 pipelines, Pipeline 1 and Pipeline 2. Pipeline 1 hauls the gasoline. Pipeline 2 does jet fuel and diesel fuel.
That's a long way. You know it.
Yeah.
How long does it take to get a gallon from Texas to the
I
Carolinas? You
ain't got
think?
no clue, bub. That's the same one though that the Russian hackers, shut down a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same one, but it's leaking. So, and that's interesting. They're not telling where it's leaking in
Those people
Paulding
be
County.
going getting some.
In
wouldn't they?
Paulding. Go on ahead and get you some of that dirty gas. See
Yeah.
what it does to
Filling
you.
up their
Yeah,
trash
but
bags.
it's supposed to be back up and running January 17th.
Well, that's good to know locally.
Yep.
I do have one other piece of national news. Robert Kennedy Jr.
I
has
like him.
has set out with a goal of cleaning up the food industry in America, which I think is a great idea.
Is that part of the FDA already changing their labels already?
Well, I'm wondering that there's breaking news. The FDA has banned red number 3.
Oh, really?
food coloring. Like they have banned it from
Is there
being
another red?
40, ain't there?
Yeah, there's multiple. Yeah, there's all kinds of them. So I don't know what the thought process behind banning just one of them, but it is red.
You can calm down over there. Is what you can do.
Hunter thought that was
I'm
funny.
not Chad. I'll pitch a fit.
Red number 3 has been banned though. Now I don't know. Once again, I know
better
this.
not find none of it in my food. Then.
I know this is news, and I'm supposed to know why, but I don't know why just that one. Seems odd to me that that's even happened now. At this point, like why is the FDA banning food coloring 5 days before the inauguration? I mean, I thought that was what Robert Kennedy was going to do, but
You say it's 5 days to the inauguration?
yep. Yep. So I don't know. That's an interesting piece of news. I mean, I think that's good to clean up the food and water,
Oh, yeah.
but that's just a confusing.
They need to cut all the dyes out.
You think so?
Yeah.
What do you think they're doing to you? The dyes
Dying you.
when you could don't make you die.
Yeah, they're dying you.
Okay.
There's a guy, he's got a speech impediment. And I seen him the other day. There's a red 40 challenge. And he's like, join me for the red 40 challenge. And he does like cherry Sprite, cherry 7-Up, Canada Dry, raspberry. And he puts
Are
them.
you serious, dude? Are you telling me this right now?
And he puts all these red 40 drinks in there. And it's like supposed to be impossible to drink it because the red 40. And he got about that much of it now. He's like, I can't handle the red 40 challenge. And he dumps it all in the sink.
So what does him having a speech impediment got to do with
It
him?
didn't, it didn't have to do with nothing.
That was hateful. That was pure hateful.
That's what makes it appealing to watch, to listen at him talk while he's trying to do it.
So why don't you
Yeah, I
just
find
watch him-
disabilities real appealing.
why don't you just listen to him talk about something else then, Corn? Not while he poisons
If
himself.
he didn't have a speech impediment, he wouldn't even have been doing it. And you know that as well as I do. You know that.
All right, Mimi.
Go ahead.
All right, Patreon. I'm gonna let Blake answer this while I go pee.
Who do you think you are?
This is from Ryan.
Don't talk to him when he's in there.
Ryan allows the topic of homeschooling has come up a few times. In your opinion, which subjects or skill sets should be prioritized to best prepare future generations? That's for Blake.
Well,
and Paul both.
Hunter's been homeschooled.
His whole life.
Appeal to him.
That's for Blake and Paul.
All right.
Well, I mean, I'm in the midst of it, so I don't know what works and what don't. But I mean, obviously, you got to know how to read and write and do math. So those are quite important. But I think outside of that, you need to teach your kids how to solve problems and talk to people.
Yeah.
If you can speak and then a problem comes up and you can solve it, the rest of the stuff you're going to learn by living life. Like you have to learn how to read, and you got to learn how to write. Like you're going to learn that stuff. And math, math beyond.
That's pretty important.
Yeah, but math beyond algebra. I mean, I don't know that I've used much any of that beyond algebra. That's just me. You can use a calculator for it if you were to need to do something beyond that. But you ain't doing much figuring. If you need to figure something beyond algebra, you're probably gonna pay someone to figure it, or you're gonna type it in Google. But so I think about it up to algebra on math, reading and writing. History is important, but you almost have to have the desire to learn history for it to apply it, because if you don't, you just memorize it. Like I never had that desire as a kid, so I don't remember much of anything about history. I just learned enough to
That is
do
a lot
well
of
on the
history is
test.
memorization
Yeah.
in school, I think. But
And so, yeah, I mean, to me, the most important thing, I just did a public speaking thing with Blakely. I said, hey, what do you want to do your speech on? And then I kind of outlined it and gave her questions and said, here's like a way to take notes and outline it, answer these questions. And then I want you to present this speech to the family. So she did in front of mom and dad, Chad, me, Josie, Big Nan, all of us. So she, but she's familiar with us. But she stood up in front, gave her speech, asked for questions on the end. answered the questions that they had that we hadn't talked about. You know, I'd helped her through the speech, but then the questions at the end were like hard questions. She decided she wanted to do the speech on loving people. So then mom and dad hit her with these hard questions like, well, how do you love people that are unlovable? And, you know, like questions that someone, but I was like, well, let's see how she does. And she actually answered it, you know, with some sort of cognitive thought that made sense. And so anyways, we started doing that, or we've done that once. So I think those are my main points. And that's, as you know, we've only been homeschooled a few years, but
I think, you know, communication, being able to, you know, eyes on text, the endurance to be able to read text for meaning and then be able to write about it and talk about it. And to talk about it so much of the time. I mean, you know, nobody likes to talk on the phone anymore. They just text. And, you know, I'm old, so I like to talk on the phone.
I can't stand it.
Text.
Yeah.
But I think to be able to communicate and problem solve is huge. That's why even in public schools, STEM has become such an investment of importance, not just like a STEAM or STEM activity, but actually in the regular classroom teaching reading. How can we look at a problem and solve it using writing and reading and researching it to know, you know, real life type problems. So I think that's one of the great benefits of homeschool is you really can tailor your curriculum to the strengths and weaknesses of that kid. You know, sometimes you really want to work on those weaknesses. Sometimes you really want to cater to their strengths and give them an opportunity that kind of helps direct them in a path of passion.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the great benefits. I mean, I'm in public education. I'm certainly a advocate for that, but also my family, I was talking to Hunter earlier, my family has my two sisters were homeschooled, and you know, they do well.
Yeah.
And you know, so many cool opportunities you have out there. But I don't think I'm with Blake. I think, you know, there's a lot of the upper level math and even you know, even like sociology, psychology, all those things, those are more for a specific career path, and you're going to get that in college. It's so, one of the things that's so interesting to me is like in high school and in college, there's so much repetitiveness. And part of that is because you have to have it to learn. So like when you're taking anatomy and physiology in high school, and then you go take anatomy and physiology in college in a kinesiology major, then you go take physical therapy and they make you take it again. Yeah. And, you know, so, you know, I think the big thing is being able to problem solve, being able to read enough, not just to be able to read the book, but to be able to learn it enough that you can apply it. And then that, no matter what anybody said, like readers are leaders is one of the things I've heard. I agree with that. And I also say learners are leaders. Like, can you learn from other people effectively?
Yeah. You got them super chats, bub?
Let me see.
You should have had them ready.
I should have.
No, he should.
Oh, what a good job as host today, Cornbread.
Chili, you do a good job every day in every role that you're in. You're literally the most supportive team member that is here at 3-7.
Who do y'all think the first super chat's from?
Marty Bingham.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I would have guessed.
$4.99. We need to be thinking about fitting Mr. Flabulous with a boat for his Arctic Circle gig. It will be here before you know it.
That's true.
Yeah. Thank you, Marty.
He needs to be thinking about that, Marty, not us.
Yeah, it's about.
Got other things.
He's not even here. He's in Texas.
Marty Bingham come back in at $4.99. It will most likely need to have some pontoons added to compensate for the middle-age spread.
I would have. You know what else I would have done after you guessed who the first super chat was? I would have bet about $1,000 that he would have super chatted again, and he did.
Would you have bet that he did it again?
He did 3.
Yep. Marty Bingham, $9.99. I'm going to paddle it upstream ahead of time to mark the shallow spots where he might drag due to the enormous weight he's working with.
He doesn't know you can just put all that into one.
I don't think he does.
Thank you, Marty.
Then we had little Virgil come in at 99 cents with that straight mouth face, with the beady eyes. Yeah, like you was talking about.
Like that.
Yep.
Yeah. That would be it. Thank you, little Virgil.
And below that, he commented, "I bet a penny and it shot through the roof."
Yeah.
So, and above that, he commented 151.
Yeah.
So,
151. That makes sense now.
Yeah. Natty Ice coming in 99 cents.
5.7% alcohol. Good night.
Then we had Gatekeeper Radio 347 come in at 99 cents. No message from either one of them.
Oh, if Chad was here, he'd be pissed.
Patrick Rowe coming at 99 cents.
Oh, he'd
with
be
a
so mad.
crying face.
Good grief.
He'd be mad.
And he came in again at 99 cents with a face with his mouth open and some dribble coming out.
What the crap, man?
Yeah.
Exactly. There it is. Now we got it.
Kelby Bosshoss coming in $1.99. CB, you read any good memes lately?
No, Kelsey, I ain't. Bub.
Kelby.
That's a reference to your joke from
What
Monday.
was what'd he say on this one?
Parameters.
Parameters.
That's unbelievable.
Patrick Rowe come back in at 99 cents with that straight mouth face like
Oh, wow.
LV.
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick.
Gatekeeper Radio 347, $10.
Whoa.
Thanks, guys, for talking about one of the most important topics grown, the @ symbol, SS, men need to discuss. Chad, do something for your money, son.
There you go. Thank you.
Get him, Paul. There we got Allison Dodd coming in at $5.
Whoa.
God.
Sliding in with a super chat under $10 while Chad's gone. Great job, guys. Hard conversations are the best one.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you,
Allison. Ryan come in at $9.99. Good word. Needed this one today. 2 kids under 3 here, and it ain't easy, but thankful every day for this journey.
Yeah, and it ain't terrible twos. It's threes that get you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Frog Driver come in at $10.
What in the world is that?
Took off work today. Procured 1 gold buffalo inbound. Let's go. That's Tom probably.
Who's this from?
Frog Driver.
Frog Driver.
But you know, on Resurrected, his name's Frog. P.
Oh, that's Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that
Tom.
should be Frog.
Yeah.
Frog Driver.
Yeah, Tom.
And that'll conclude the super chats.
There we go.
Blake's over it.
That's all of it. Well,
All
thank
right.
y'all. Lord willing, we'll be here Monday with the Monday meeting.
Do you know how to sign off?
You're going to do it.
Do you know how to sign off the show?
Enough said.